We're coming to you from the Shakespeare Room at the Hoover Library. Welcome, welcome. My name is Shannon Haddock, and tonight we're doing a little bit to celebrate Earth Day, Earth Week, with a presentation from Paul Freeman, who has been a friend for a long time, but I really don't know your background, so I should have asked for a bio.
I can do that for you.
But I've known Paul since he worked at the Nature Conservancy of Alabama, and now he works for Solar, Eagle Solar and Light. And he's going to explain a little bit about solar lighting, solar panels in Alabama, renewable energy, and I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you very much, Shannon. I certainly want to thank you, and I thank the Hoover Library for the opportunity to speak to you tonight, both in person and on Zoom. If you'd like to, Shannon, when you get a chance, we'll share the screen so I can get the PowerPoint presentation. My background, just for those, I'm a native of Tennessee, Chattanooga, Tennessee zone. I've lived in the Birmingham area for over 20 years. I've got degrees in biology and chemistry and in environmental science, master's in environmental science. A lot of training protecting water, rivers and waters across the southeast U.S., but I've always been interested in renewable energy and benefits for the people that embrace renewable energy like solar, and also the benefits that it has for our environment. So my presentation tonight is sure as the sun rises, that solar is a sustainable energy solution. And again, let me see if my clicker works.
Go ahead
and
try
once. And if it doesn't work, I will.
We're already.
That's okay. I'm going to take you. That's okay.
There we go.
That's great. Let me just tell you a little bit about Eagle Solar Light. We're a solar, full service solar company here, based in headquarters here in Alabama, in the Birmingham area, but we work across 4 states: North Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi, and soon to be working in South Carolina. Our primary focus is working with commercial customers and nonprofits, but we do certainly help some residential customers in both North Carolina, Georgia, and Alabama. Next slide, please. Shannon, also I'm going to ask you if you'll make sure you give me a flash time for maybe 10 minutes left. I can talk a lot, and I don't want to. We're close to death by PowerPoint tonight, but we'll go through this. Just to let you know, I don't know how much you guys know about solar. If anybody has solar in their homes, but we're going to talk a little bit about what solar energy is, and
I'm sorry.
that is okay. We're going to talk about who wants solar and why. We'll talk about how does it work, really sort of define some of the solar technology. We'll talk about some of the economic and certainly the environmental benefits of solar, types of different arrays that we use on homes and businesses, and so give you a couple tools that you can use for your home and business. If you want to do a little quick and free evaluation without talking to a solar professional like myself, there's a few things you can do from home. We'll talk about trends and how Alabama is doing for solar. Next slide, please.
Alrighty.
So, solar technologies. In our industry, we talk a lot about PV. This letter stands for photovoltaic, which means really just sort of light and words, the Latin words from light and voltage. We can have solar panels and solar technologies that make electricity. That's what PV stands for. We can also use the thermal aspects of the sun to heat water. So that's solar thermal. You preheat your water, and you can bring that into your house and use. Everybody's left the garden hose out in the sun sometimes, and the water gets really hot. And we can use that for both commercial and residential applications. I won't talk much about what concentrated solar is, but that's basically reflecting the sun's light all to one point and really superheating one aspect, and you can generate a lot of energy by magnifying the sun and focusing on one point. Hey, here's an Alabama home with using 3 different forms of solar energy, solar technology here. They've got the PV, or the panels that are making the electricity on the roof. They've also got a collector that's collecting the solar thermal energy and preheating water. But they've also used some passive solar design by extending eaves over their homes to block the sun on the southern side of the house and take advantage of the shade, whereas you're avoiding some of the solar. So this is a few different technologies we call passive solar and then active solar using the PV and the thermal. Next slide, please. Guess what? Solar energy and harnessing the power of the sun has been around for a long time. Here's a picture made in 1906 in California, and you can see a solar water collector, thermal collector. So they're preheating the water in a home. I imagine in 1906, it was a luxury to have a hot water and a hot bath, and certainly these folks recognized the ability to do that. So we've been hundreds of years using solar technology, but really only probably the last 50 using that technology to produce electricity at scale and the efficiency that's effective in our homes or businesses. Next slide, please. We can use solar. It's not just from 1906. The technology works. We're keeping the International Space Station alive and working using solar panels. Always above your head. So there's at least, if you don't see much solar around Alabama, at least you know there's at least a huge solar panel on the International Space Station. Most efficient and effective way to power that space station. Got about 240,000 watts of power on those solar arrays to power the International Space Station. You certainly can't have at this point we can't use nuclear power in space. We can't burn firewood or coal or natural gas in space. So solar is certainly a great utility. Is utilized well there. Next slide, please. Solar energy. So this is a fancy map showing basically the amount of sunshine and amount of solar energy that we have hit across the United States. Red and it's a heat map. So red and darker red colors show more energy per square meter or per unit are hitting the ground. The desert Southwest with plenty of sunshine in the southern hemisphere, but less rain gets the desert condition there gets more sunshine. When you look over and you see Alabama, you see that we're in a similar pattern across the southeastern U.S. The things to note, though, we're only getting about, if you look at the scale over here, we're only getting about 10% less sunshine in number of hours and amount of energy than, say, Central Texas. And so we get plenty of sunshine to be effective at making energy in Alabama and the southeastern U.S. And you can look at states like Massachusetts, which gets about 10% less than Alabama. It's one of the states with the most solar installed in it. So we get plenty of sunshine here in Alabama, plenty of opportunity. We will talk about this a little bit, but Alabama is often considered maybe the 45th, 48th, 50th, even 52nd state, when behind Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico, when you get on the charts for the amount of solar that's been installed. It's not because of our weather, it's not because of our sunshine. It's politics, as someone from the audience mentioned. Go next slide, please. So who wants solar? A lot of folks that are interested in sort of save the planet, doing it for the right reasons, for clean air and clean water. They want to reduce their carbon footprint. They want to reduce the amount of pollution associated with fossil fuels. That's a very noble reason. We get homeowners and business owners that just want to lower their power bill. Your power bill is a huge operating expense in your home and can be for your business too. So we get folks that are just thrifty and want to save money. Because solar energy, we can make solar energy on your home or in your business cheaper than you can buy the electricity from the grid. Once the solar panels are installed, it's essentially free energy coming into your home or business. Then we get applications like the International Space Station, people that want to live off grid without connecting to the grid. Want to be independent. Sometimes you see them on TV, that folks living in Alaska with a cabin and they're just away from a power plant, away from the grid. You want to have portable power. You can use solar on your boats and your RVs and your cabins, hunt cabins, and those that just want to have the basis. Passionate about new technology. We get folks that are sort of tech junkies, want the latest and greatest, and want to be a leader. You get people that are just mad at their utilities based on either their price that they're paying for their electricity or the service history. They're frustrated and they want a different alternative. And then we're seeing this lately as big corporations are mandating environmental and social and governance ESG policies to come down, and so sometimes you get pressure from someone who has influence over it. Solar basics. Let's move to that. Please, next slide. Hey, when I talk about solar panels, I'm talking about a panel that's made up of multiple solar cells. Most solar panels can have 60, 70, maybe 144 different individual solar cells across the panel. The panel, or we call it the solar module, is generally an aluminum frame with a piece of protective glass on the top, and then the semiconductors, which are the cells, laminated or just underneath that glass that protects it. The glass protects it from the weather, both the rain and the wind and temperatures, but then the frame holds it together. You add multiple panels together and you form an array, a solar array or a PV array. Next. Within each solar module is a term. You've heard semiconductors for many years. This is an example of using a semiconductor. Lights, the particles of light, the photons of light from the sun, or in some cases, from your own lights inside the home. You get photons of light bombarding the passing through a glass cover, and there's usually an anti-reflection coating on that, so we don't reflect light. We want it to pass through. It comes through these contact sheets, and there's a positive and negative exchange where we're dislodging electrons from the silicon wafer or the cell there. And those electrons start moving, and then we have enough conductors that gather those electrons and start moving that current out of the panel. You could spend more than an hour talking about how solar panels work. It's pretty nifty stuff. Is it space age technology? Probably not. We probably figured that out on our own without alien help. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Since panels and arrays have become commercially available, how much has changed as far as this goes?
Great. So the technology has changed. Well, the panels have become more efficient over the past 30, 40 years, significantly more efficient. And the price of solar has gone down. I have another slide later that talks about the change over time. But generally, we were much more efficient in the way we can harness this electricity. More than twice as efficient for the same piece of same area of a solar panel from now compared to, say, the 1980s. Next slide, please. Solar panels can be mounted. You see on the right here, we can mount solar panels on the top of a roof and mount it directly there in a nice existing structure. If you don't have a structure, you can mount the solar panels on the ground. We'll try to always avoid the shade. Avoid the shade from the building, avoid the shade from the chimneys on the building, the trees, and that kind of stuff. But we will want these, and we'll talk a little bit about how we face the panels. But there are usually two types. We call them ground mounts and a roof mount or rooftop. Next slide, please.
We did have a question from the audience.
Sure.
Is it even, I think you're going to get to this, but is it even possible to have solar given the Alabama PSC?
Thank you, Marie. Give me just a couple slides. That's a great question. And that short answer is yes. We can be frustrated, but we can still make it work at some couple levels here. Solar panels can be on the ground, can be on your roof, and sometimes we can build structures to elevate them. Here we are using them over at Calhoun Community College to shade some parking space, but also provide some area for actually mounting the solar panels. Next slide. It's nice to get multiple use out of the same piece of property, same place. Agrivoltaics, fancy word, just talking about making electricity over the tops of your crops. If you've got a field, you can elevate those panels, still grow the crops underneath. In this case, these panels are actually tracking the sun. They move on an axis and follow the sun during the day, not excluding all the light. You see the plants underneath. There are some plants that actually do better with dappled or diffuse light. you're actually reducing some heat on these crops and reducing the amount of evaporation, amount of water these plants take up. So you can have some synergy and some mutual benefits of putting solar over the top of cropland. So you don't have to think about losing space to add solar. We often try and put it on those areas that are already existing, but they can work together. And this is going to be a really cool opportunity across the globe, not just in Alabama, but across the world, to use the same piece of land and generate electricity and food. That seems like a pretty reasonable request. Next. Electric vehicles. Electric vehicles are coming. Like them, love them or not. Some of you may drive them already. If you're charging them from home, and you are most likely using the grid to charge your car, so you're using the power that's provided by your utility, which can be from natural gas or from nuclear or from hydropower, and that kind of stuff. And we're going to see the opportunity where people's power bills are going to increase when they start plugging in their cars at home. Their gas bill, their gasoline credit card, that price goes down, but at home you might charge, your electric bill will go up. We're going to see opportunities to charge your cars at home and at your workplace, at libraries. There's nothing wrong with providing solar panels on the top of a public library and providing some opportunities for people to charge the car while they're here for a program, or that people commute and work here, that kind of stuff. So we'll see solar complementing the grid and where we're charging cars, and we'll also see some standalone electric vehicle charging stations in remote areas and along highways where the grid is not already available. The technology is here. It's just still rolling out. Those that drive electric vehicles know it's sometimes hard to find the charging stations and that infrastructure. Well, so what makes a good site for solar? Short answer: we want it sunny and facing the southern sky if we can. That's the short answer. So we try to avoid the shade, get away from the trees, get away from that side. The north side of a house is shaded by the southern side of the house. The sun rises in the east, passes across the sky and sets in the west. In the wintertime, the sun is low in the southern sky. So the southern side of your home gets more sunshine. The northern side gets less. So we often try and mount the panels to face the southern sky. East is okay. It gets the morning sun. Southeast is okay. Southeast and southwest are all right. South is better. That's the opportunity. When you mount panels on the ground, you have no roof to follow. So you mount them where you get the most efficient aspect of azimuth for the sunshine. I hope that makes sense. Good question.
The ones that
Tracking.
tracking,
Yes.
are those like more expensive and more sophisticated, or is that
Great question. So most of the solar that we do here in Alabama and for our customers is a fixed panel. So it's mounted and it follows the angle of the roof and the direction of the roof before we put it on the ground. The tracking panels have dual axis and single axis trackers. Single axis can track the panel across the day,
right?
and then dual axis can track it across day and season because the sun is higher and lower in the sky. And so they absolutely are more efficient tracking the sun because the panel, it says we want it as perpendicular to the sun's rays as possible, so it gets the most sun. When you track the sun, just like the sunflower moves across the day and follows the path of the sun, panels can do that. Is it more efficient? Yes, it makes more electricity. Is it more expensive? Absolutely. It's more complex. You have now a moving part and a motor to energize and something to possibly fail. A solar panel itself, that's just a module attached to your roof or on the ground, has almost virtually no moving parts. It's very durable, very reliable, and so it's a trade-off for expense and also it's one of these things where utilities often do that tracking. When their goal is to sell power, provide power to many homes and many businesses, they'll invest in this tracking. Next slide, please. So grid tied, or when you still have your electrical grid to your home, we work with solar panels. Yeah, solar panels convert the sunlight, those photons of light, to direct current, DC power. Your home is most likely using alternating current or AC power. So we have an inverter that flips it from DC to AC, and it goes directly into your electrical panel, kind of usually behind your meter, and provides the electricity for your home or for part of your home, depending on the size and your goals and needs. If you make extra electricity, if you're making more electricity in your home than you're consuming, you have the opportunity. We can dial the inverters back to where they only make as much as you need. But if they are not set that way, they're making more, you can export that energy to the grid, to pass through your meter and back out to the utility where your neighbors can use it. In some parts of the U.S., the utilities pay you for that extra energy. They pay you handsomely, pay you the same that you're paying them. In Alabama, that's not the case. They pay significantly less for the energy that you would sell to them or export than what they charge.
So you can also store the excess energy on site with the battery.
Yes, sir. And you're absolutely right there. So next slide, talking about, that was a grid tied hybrid system we'll get to in a second with batteries or off grid. But yeah, so you made extra energy during the day, you can use it in your home and or store it in the batteries. And so if you store the batteries, then it's yours to use whenever you want it. You can use it that night when the sun goes down. That's where a lot of people use it. And some people store it for emergencies in case the grid fails or the power goes out. You now have this surplus of energy ready to use. So those are the two mains. But we talked about grid tied. Off grid is when there's no utility there at all. You're self-contained. That's the cabin in the woods. That's the house who doesn't want the utility to come to their home. And so you've got to make your own energy. You often have a battery bank and usually have an optimal generator like that uses probably fossil fuels, probably natural gas or diesel or something like that. And it's there to charge the batteries in case you don't have enough sunlight to keep those batteries fully charged or you're using a lot of extra energy. Most of our systems for residential homes that we sell here in Alabama are a hybrid system. And so they use the solar panels during the day to meet their needs. They charge the batteries and they then keep the utility there as a backup in case next slide. And this is so installation options. Direct roof mount, as you mentioned before, that's the common way. And we will attach it to your trusses or the rafters in your home through your roof with a racking system. For flat roofs, we can use a ballasted roof, which are just weights to kind of hold the panels down. In Alabama, most of our systems are designed to withstand 120-mile-an-hour winds. They're not going to go anywhere. Down at the coast, we actually engineered about 140 miles an hour. And so there's enough anchor points to keep the panels from blowing away or moving along. And the same thing, enough weight on your roof to keep the system in place.
Now, tornadoes can get higher than that, so.
So the question or the observation was tornadoes can do that. So the solar panel is designed to stay with your house. If the tornado, God forbid, and hopefully not, if it's taking away your home and your roof, it's going to take your solar panels.
Yeah.
Gotcha. And so I hope that's, there's a lot of things to worry about if there's an F5 tornado bearing down on it. But if you can withstand the 120 mile an hour winds, 100 miles, when the storm passes, you may not have power, your neighbors not, but if you've got this hybrid system or off-grid system, you should be able to make your own power. So ground-mounted frames, when we talk about ground mounts, we can build our own frames. And you can also attach, you don't have to go to the roof, you can also attach structures, or attach the frame to existing structures and utilize them. Next slide, please.
Quick question.
Yes.
You may get to this, I don't know. The demographics of Alabama, I would guess that maybe Huntsville has more solar because there's more people there that are scientists and might be inclined to, invest in it. How does it look over the state of Alabama?
Great question. So you're absolutely right. Some communities, to be honest, techie communities and more affluent communities usually have more solar. In Alabama, that area around Huntsville, northern Alabama is served by the Tennessee Valley Authority. Their policies for promoting solar were much better early on them and the electric cooperatives that serve the TVA, the Tennessee Valley, actually incentivized some solar years back. They had their own research. Most of the central part of the state served by Alabama Power doesn't have as favorable policies and approach and incentives. So that's some of the disparity in our state. It's not so much about the weather or even the technological advancement of the community. It has to do with our utilities and our public service commission that sets their policies. So absolutely, solar can save you some money. As I mentioned before, it usually costs less to make your energy than you purchase the electricity from the grid. Your raw materials for making the energy is the sunshine. That's free as compared to a truckload or a train load of coal or natural gas or a dam, hydropower. It's pretty cheap energy because the water is generally free. But you go from that. So you can make your power cheaper than buying it from the grid. There are tax credits in Alabama provided by the federal government. It's called the ITC, or Investment Tax Credit. If you want to look up one thing on the internet to understand the federal tax credit, look up solar and the 3 letters ITC, and you'll get some information about the 26% of the cost of the system that you can get back. If you pay federal income taxes as a homeowner or a business, you can deduct, you get a credit, actually, you get a credit for the purchase of that solar system. So if you spend $10,000 on solar, you can get a $2,600 credit on your taxes. I certainly can't give tax advice. You always talk to your accountants and your tax professional. For businesses, there's a bonus depreciation. It's called, and they often can see another 25% of the cost of the system. If you're a tax-paying business, for-profit business, you can actually couple those together. You get 26 for the ITC and 25% or so for the bonus depreciation. You now pay for about 50% of the system. If you are a farmer, if you have your business is primarily an agricultural practice anywhere in the state of Alabama, or if you're a small business in the rural parts of the state, there's a grant from the U.S. Department of Agriculture called the Rural Energy for America Program, or REAP, and it has a grant, a competitive grant that folks can apply for it and be awarded a grant paid for another 25% of the system. So farmers and small business and rural parts of the state of Alabama have a lot of this can cobble together. Up to 75% of the cost of the system can be realized through grants and tax benefits. Next slide, please. Absolutely. There's a sort of environmental responsibility. It's Earth Day, it's Earth Week, and a lot of folks are interested in doing solar for the right reason. I think historically, a lot of folks who were promoting solar were doing it for the benefit of the planet and that kind of stuff. Most of our conversations now lends to chief financial officers and folks who are looking at their household budget. They're trying to save money because we've turned the corner and solar is economically makes sense. It's not just the folks who want to do the right thing for the planet.
Well,
But
one of the comments from the audience said Alabama Power does not like solar. So I don't know if you want to go into that opinion, but
I don't mind mentioning that. Let me hit a slide about that in just a minute.
okay.
So they have, as the Public Service Commission and Alabama Power have some policies that make it unfriendly. Solar make Alabama one of the most unfriendly states, especially for residential solar, and we'll talk about that. For businesses, Alabama Power actually plays pretty fairly and can take care of. It doesn't put up many roadblocks for those businesses, but we'll look at it. So we talked about solar. It has a lot of benefits as renewable energy and environmental responsibility. Next slide, please. So as you know, that renewables save a little bit more than just the money. We often see negative impacts of fossil fuel production and even the mining of our natural resources. So here in Alabama, here's a couple of pictures of a coal-fired power plant, and you have to worry about sulfur and nitrous emissions, carbon dioxide, and airborne pollutants. And a lot of times there can be runoff from mining operations and fossil fuel collections there. So here's water sediments and toxins that can hit the water. And obviously there are solar panels are not immune from any impact, but that there are glass and aluminum and some heavy metals that are used in the construction of solar panels. So there is an impact that for mining of lithium for the batteries, of silica, even though it's one of the most common elements on the planet. There's still some raw materials that go into the construction and movement of solar panels. So it's not immune from any impact, but the impacts are much, much less, especially when you look compared to some of our historic and antiquated fossil fuel producing factories. Next. Here's an example of in West Virginia of mountaintop removal of coal and land disturbance and wastes that are filling up a valley and putting everything from an elementary school to the other homeowners downstream and downstream, the water users of that valley at risk. Next slide, please. Other impacts of fossil fuels. We've got tar sands mining. You see a lot of stuff. There's fracking associated with natural gas that people often put their crosshairs on. Air pollution, water quality. A lot of water use in electricity production for fossil fuel plants, nuclear plants, and hydros consume a lot of water just to make that energy. And of course, a solar panel, once it's installed on your home or on your field, doesn't use any of that water. So we'll pass. Next slide. And thanks again for anybody who can it was ask questions. I think the way to put them in the comment section, and Shannon will feed those to you.
Yeah.
We know some of the largest polluters in the nation are some of our fossil fuel plants here in Alabama, as far as CO2 emissions and general pollutants. And you can see there's land disturbance associated with everything from quarrying, stripping the overburden back to get to the coal to the actual footprint of plants.
We have a couple more questions.
Yes.
One that I hadn't thought of, but where did the actual panels come from?
Great question. So most of the panels that there are some U.S. manufacturers and assembly of solar panels. There's always generally an imported component. But a lot of panels come from China and Japan, Korea, Singapore, Vietnam, India, Germany. They're made in Canada, but there's lots of panels that come from our Asian countries, and a lot of those are imported into it and components of it. But there have been some attempts to assemble and manufacture the solar cells in factories in Tennessee. There are panels that are being assembled in Georgia. We have a Korean company called LG, was one of the largest manufacturers of solar panels in the nation, based up in Huntsville. They recently announced that they're going to be closing that factory to focus on some other products. But there's the opportunity to assemble and manufacture in the U.S. Most of it is as an imported component.
And the other question deals with electric cars. If you buy an electric car, can you get a solar panel to charge it, or do you have to work through Alabama Power for that? And I think you're leading towards that.
I'll leave that. The short answer is you wouldn't have to work through. If you wanted to charge your car, my recommendation is you put the solar on your home and you feed that electricity into your home all day, and you use that power. You put your charger on the house and it becomes an appliance on your home. And so you use it, and the electricity, instead of being designated for the charger at your home and only the charger, you put it into the whole house. That way, when you're making electricity, it can be used for your air conditioner, your microwave, or your lights, or your car charger. If your car is not there to receive that energy and it was dedicated to it, that's kind of a wasted resource, wasted opportunity. So that's my personal opinion, is you put it on the building where you work, or you put it on your home, and you feed that electricity, and You then either charge batteries. If you charge your car at night, which a lot of folks come home and charge, you wouldn't have the benefit of the sunshine at night anyway. But you could store that extra energy in the battery at your home and charge the battery of your car with the battery at your house. I hope that answered that.
That's a pretty good answer, I think. And I think you touched on this, but I may have missed it. I have a
Next
Prius, and my battery on my Prius is wonderful, but I do read a lot about how the really fine and rare
Elements
that
raw
are
materials.
the raw materials are hard to come by and more rare. And that gives me angst, of course, but is it the same thing with the making and production of the solar panels?
Yeah, so silica wafers, one of the most common elements on the planet, sand, is the major component in the solar panels. But you're right, the components of the lithium for the batteries, sometimes cadmium and boron, those are expensive elements, and there's a lot of energy expended to pull those resources out of the ground. Remind me to talk, if I don't hit a slide about recycling, remind me to mention the opportunities to recycle the materials associated with the solar panels and the batteries, whether it's your EV, electric vehicle, or the solar for your home. I will say this, the electric vehicle market has greatly advanced the battery technology for our homes. Just a decade ago or so, we were still selling the lead acid batteries for your home if you were going to be charging batteries and maybe using it at your house. That's relatively old technology. The quest or the incentive to make batteries lighter and more efficient and take up less space has improved that for vehicles, has greatly advanced what we can work with now at home. The price of batteries is still decreasing over time. The technology has improved. Next slide, please. Just a reminder, even the Vatican has, you don't have to take my word for it. There are a lot of churches and a lot of entities promoting the goal to reduce their carbon footprint. It comes to the Vatican. Could be your local church here, looking at the stewardship of creation and all those incentives. So it's not just companies, that kind of stuff. Remind you of tools. I mentioned I'd give you a tool. One of my favorite tools to suggest to homeowners and business owners around Central Alabama here is to go to Project Sunroof, and it's a Google opportunity. You can go in there and look. It goes. It has done an assessment for most of your buildings and homes in the more urban areas across the state. So that's one thing we'll talk about here. If you want to go to the next slide. In our profession, we use a solar Pathfinder that predicts the amount of sunshine that your home or your property will receive over the course of the year. We have a little tool that goes out there and tracks the sun and looks for shadows on your roof. And then I get that one look, and I'll always encourage you to go to Project Sunroof if you can find that, and type in your address for your home or business or your friends, and check their roof out. We'll go to the next slide here. Yellow is the color that we want on that assessment, yellow or white. So solar panels, sometimes folks don't want are slow to change, and things like solar panels are not aesthetically pleasing, or we have homeowners associations that restrict the appearance of historic buildings. But I want to let you know that solar panels don't have to be offensive. They can be aesthetic. We can mount them flush to a roof. We can mount them on the ground. They can blend into your home and your property for residential system. Let's see the next slide, please.
You have the Tesla, solar
So
shingles.
the question about the Tesla roof or the solar shingles, they are available. They're more available than they were. They're relatively expensive, and Project Sunroof. That's right, and I'll be glad to share that with you later. They're more expensive, and they look good. A lot of people love the look of those, and there are actually several companies now producing either solar shingles or things that are a solar roof and to make the panels look less like an afterthought and more integrated into your homes and business. Here's an example of some of the installs that Eagle Solar Light has been fortunate enough to work with. This is down on a building off of Highway 280. Got the roof solar panels on actually several stories on one building. Next slide, please. Here's one of our public housing with downtown Birmingham. This is one of the HABD or the Housing Authority of Birmingham's builds. This is for their residential apartments here on the rooftop. As you can see, we have most of those panels oriented towards the southern sky. They don't have to follow the borders of the roof. We can orient to these. So these are ballasted systems, so they're sitting on top and have the ability to be angled to best produce electricity through the course of the day. Next slide. Here's some builds that you can actually see one in the foreground and another business in the upper right corner. These are over in Birmingham in the Mountain Brook area. We've actually got one of the highest concentrations where 4 businesses all adjacent to each other have installed solar on their businesses. Most of these you can't see. You have to fly a drone or a helicopter up to see the panels because of flat roofs. You just can't see them from the ground. As you drive around Birmingham, you don't see much solar, or anywhere in Alabama. You don't see a lot of solar. We'd like to change that and give our people opportunity, but a lot of folks just haven't embraced it yet. And when they do, they put them on top of their roof, and they can't be seen, which is fine. Still, that's a good place for solar. Talk about good use of space. This is a big flat roof with nothing on it. Just made ample opportunity to install solar and make the energy. And at times, these buildings make more energy than all the tenants are consumed during the middle of the day. They actually are exported. You have to paint the roof with them. You fill up the roof with solar, and they can be making more electricity than consumed in that building. Next slide. Oh, we can mount on the ground. This is a wastewater treatment plant in Hansville, Alabama, where they install solar to run the pumps and run the operations at the property and actually export a little bit of energy and make some money for the city wastewater treatment plant. Next slide. Here's an example of a big warehouse out in Midfield, Alabama. Those solar panels that you see, the little black specks there, take up less than 5% of the roof on this building, and they're offsetting 50% of the power of this building. So this building has the opportunity, if there was an opportunity to make energy and sell it back to the grid or export it, they would have a great opportunity there. So you also see a lot of little specs here. These are all skylights on a roof. So they're using passive light or the direct solar lighting from skylights coming through to reduce the amount of energy they consume, but then they've got the power, solar power on the roof to meet their needs. And often they also, in the middle of the day, make more energy than their building is consuming. At night, of course, they buy all their electricity from the grid because the solar panels stop working after the sun sets. Question?
So is it where it's positioned? That's why y'all positioned to the southern part?
Yeah, so this is a relatively flat roof, but this side of the building that I'm looking at faces to the south, and that faces to the north. We could have mounted them on the north side, and it still would have got plenty of sunlight. They get the best on this side of the building. The best sunlight.
It's like halfway through the warehouse. It's kind of.
So why that spot in the building? It's closest to the electrical room in the building, which is in the center of the building. And that's where we're feeding that electricity back into it. So when we had to run a wire from the solar panel to the electrical panels in the building, the shorter the distance, the better. It's just reducing the amount of materials that we use. The panels themselves could have fit anywhere, but you'd have just had more wires to have to pay for and install to get it.
Plus you get more resistance.
And yes, there's a little bit of voltage drop over this.
Count the panels. How do y'all determine how many panels to put up there?
Yeah, that's actually, I apologize. That's actually several hundred panels. Those are small panels. Each panel there is only about 1 meter by 2 meters.
Okay.
And so these are 16 separate sub arrays and a large array, but there may be, I apologize, I can't remember, maybe 250 solar panels across that
So I think her question and mine is, how do you determine for a home or a business?
So we look at the power bills. We know how much a solar panel makes. For instance, these might make 380 watts per solar panel of electricity, and we'll add those up. We know how much energy they're consuming in the building, and so we basically do the math and add that up and help try and scale the system to best meet the needs of the customer. That's a great question. I had thought about trying to explain that, but yeah, we would often look at the power bill, look at the amount of energy they consume over the course of the day or the month, and we know how much when there's a good prediction when you have a solar panel out in the sunshine, how much energy it makes. We also incorporate 30 years worth of atmospheric data, weather data, to know how many cloudy days and sunny days we have over in a given location. So we can calculate how many days the panels, may not be making as much sunlight to make as much energy because the sunlight has been diminished. Next slide, please. So we're going to, again, solar panels are generally warranted to last about 25 years. They're impact resistant to hail. A 1-inch piece of hail at 50 miles an hour bounces off that tempered glass. That the system themselves doesn't have moving parts, it's weather tight, and we often have extended warranties, 15, 20 years or more on all the electrical components of the system. So there's minimal maintenance because there's no moving parts on those solar panels. We do recommend once a year that the panels get washed off. We get a lot of pollen here in Alabama. The rain is our friend, washes that off. But maybe once a year, we recommend washing panels with just a soft cloth and some water to get any grime and algae or any deposits on it. So it's not occluding that clear glass. We want as much sunlight to pass through as possible. I know I've just got a few minutes. Let's move along as fast as I can. Hey, we talked about solar prices dropping. It used to cost over $100 per watt back in the 70s to install solar panels. There was never an economic return. It was more experimental. The price of solar has plummeted over the past 40 years. It's now down probably at utility scales less than $1 per watt to install and manufacture solar panels. I believe this is global panels. There's we're only about 2 megawatts of solar installed worldwide in 1975. By 2015, we're at something like 65,000 megawatts of solar, and we've greatly exceeded that during the last few years. It's been as a price, as the number of solar panels, the amount of solar installed, has gone up, the price has plummeted. And next slide, please. Here's an example of U.S. solar market. Solar energy, the short news is solar still makes up less than 5% of all the electrical energy generated in the U.S. And it's been increasing since in the past 20 years, or at least the past 10 or 15 years. And but we're still probably only 5%. Most of that being sort of utility scale. These are the big solar farms you come down to see on TV. But residential has been one of the fastest growing segments of solar.
Except in Alabama.
Except in Alabama.
Yeah.
Next slide. We'll talk about that here.
Yeah.
I'm running out of time. Let's here, the short answer on this kind of busy slide is when we look at where we get our energy in Alabama. Recently, we've got nuclear and natural gas, coal, all making up 20 to 30, 35%. We get a little bit of hydro, 6 or 7, some burns of wood. Solar energy is not even on the graph. We make so little that it doesn't fit on our pie charts or on our graphs. We sell over time. The dashed line right here is coal production or coal energy. It started to decline back in the 2010s. At the same time, natural gas increased. There was basically a swap from coal to natural gas. Solar did not kill the coal industry. Even though the coal production and use of coal in Alabama has declined, it's not because of solar energy, because it's been generally replaced by the natural gas. Mm-hmm. And again, next slide, you don't even see solar energy on the chart, and it's because usually it's 0.1%, maybe 0.2% of the energy produced in Alabama comes from solar. There's a lot of stats here, and I'm gonna just mention again, one of the policy years is there's a fee that Alabama Power imposes on residential homeowners and schools called the capacity reservation charge. And they charge you $5.41 for every kilowatt of solar that you install on your house. They charge you per month, whether you make it easy or not. If you have permission to put that solar on your home and you still connect to the grid, they're going to charge you a fee per month for the right to install the solar panels. And that's primarily focused on our residential homeowners and our schools. Next slide. As an example, so a typical residential homeowner might be a 7 kilowatt or 7,000 watt system. Paying $541 per kilowatt per month is about $450 a year that you can pay. Over the lifetime of that system, you can pay that power company about $11,000 for the right to put your solar panels on your own home and produce your own power. The nationwide other utilities, they charge you a little bit. Absolutely. There's a reason they charge you for things. Arizona, here's an example, about $59 a year. Here's a little co-op in Georgia that was only charging a flat fee of $10 a month, which ended up being about $3,000 of the lifetime of the system compared to our $11,000. But that same cooperative offered a rebate of $3,000 to customers if they would install solar. Duke Energy in North Carolina offered rebates for residential homeowners, equating to over $4,000 to a typical homeowner in North Carolina that would install solar. No incentives in the state, from the state of Alabama, and no incentives from our major utilities here in our state to incentivize the solar. There's actually this disincentive that a lot of people hear. It gets called the solar tax. It
Right.
frustrates a lot of people, and there's no doubt about it. We get calls every week from folks who are frustrated that there's this fee out there that suppresses, and it basically doesn't prevent you from installing solar. It does not prevent you. It just eliminates a lot of the economic savings or economic incentive to do so.
Do you have any background on how they arrived at $5.41?
That's a big question in the lawsuits and complaints amongst the Public Service Commission. I believe, I should not speak for the utility, but I believe that they did not disclose how they arrived at that number, and that's always been kind of a mystery. They've not been real transparent on that.
Just so
except,
you know,
Yeah.
if you own an electric vehicle, they would also tie with the highest peak in the country as far as the road tax.
Road taxes.
And then you get your tax. I mean, it's not on the lower end, it's $200.
$200 if you've got an electric vehicle that you're paying additional tax for the road maintenance and road.
But that was so theoretically that they were going to build public charging stations. And this has been going on, so I haven't seen one yet.
Right.
I know I'm about to run out of time, so I'm going to.
Oh, please.
You to let me know. I know some folks online may drop off, but I'm going to keep talking and just let you know. Here's a map. I mentioned schools. So we look across the U.S. Here's a map that was produced. Over 2,000 schools in California with solar power on it. Florida, 270. Maybe Pennsylvania with 500. Our neighboring states, Georgia, North Carolina, and Tennessee, 40, 30, 40, 60. Alabama has one school with solar power installed on it, according to this database here. As I mentioned, the capacity reservation charge applies to those residents on the family dwelling, or the FB rate, which is about 99% of all homeowners in the Alabama Power Service area. And then they apply that fee to customers who are on the SCH, or the school rate. They have that capacity reservation charge.
What's the one school?
I believe, don't hold me to it. Well, there's a private school, which is the Altamont School here in town. But I believe the one that made this list was one up near, maybe in Winston County, and they had just a little token demonstration solar project. Next slide, please. Number of homes and businesses. This is a report, this graphic put out by the Southern Environmental Law Center. Over 25,000 homes and businesses in South Carolina with solar, 21,000 in North Carolina, Virginia, 15,000, 16,000. Alabama, 500 different homes and businesses. Again, we saw from the map, we get as much sunlight and sunshine as our neighboring states. We're just as big as in thin area, but we have much fewer instances of solar power being installed. Next slide. Solar also can be an economic boom for the community. We look at the number of jobs of people working in solar energy. Alabama has also probably less than 500 workers working in the solar industry, and there could be 10 times as many in the state of Georgia and North Carolina. And so thousands of people have jobs as people are struggling and looking for work or losing their jobs in some of the sectors. Solar was one of the fastest growing cross sectors of the growth a few years ago. Next slide. I'm going to take you through one quick thing from a solar professional. This is just an example of how we look at a building and how we install solar. Here's a building here near downtown Birmingham. Got some flat roof, got some pitched roof. You can tell by the way the sun is that part of it faces the southern sky, some faces the northern sky. This is just a Google Earth image. Is this a good example for ability for solar? Next slide, please. Let's look at it. We'll throw it through Google Earth image. There's that same building. You see the pitched roof in the center, flat areas to the south and to the north. The length of the building runs east to west, and so there's one side facing south and one facing north. Let's look at it with the Google project summary. Yellow means more sunshine and more light. So we've got the pitched and angled side of the building is exceptionally good for solar. The northern side, orange, is not as good. Doesn't make as much sunlight. Purple is basically meaning it's shaded. And so this taller roof is actually shading part of the roof. That would be a terrible place to put solar panels. So on this building, we would look at it saying, it's pretty obvious we're led to the spot on that side of the building to install solar. Next slide. So here we are on that roof, on that southern facing side of the building. We've installed racking panels and clamps that attach to the existing roof. Got some aluminum rails attaching the solar panels to that racking system, those rails, and then hooking up the electrical components. Next slide, please. When we're all done, paint the entire building over there. Building structurally sound, well built. We added some additional weight, but we covered up most of that southern side of the building. Next slide. And now when you can go into Google map, you can now see the newer picture, and it shows the solar panels on that side of the building. And that customer, will be extremely pleased, lowering their power bill. We put it on the correct side of the building and made good use of that. It's a perfect example of a building with some potential and placing those solar panels in the right location to maximize the economic return for that customer. Next slide. Here's here we are at the Hoover Public Library. You might recognize that. Any guess with a big flat roof, a bunch of different elevations in this building? Is it going to be good for solar or
Parts
not?
of it could be.
Parts of it could be. What we will be looking for. Points out flat. Guess what? Flat doesn't really, if it's pitched up an angle, we want it facing the southern. If it's flat, then we place the solar panels on there and tip them up and face the sun sky. So let's run it through Google. Bright yellow is good. Plenty of space. If anybody from the public library and the municipal Hoover is listening, you've got great opportunities to put solar on part of the building. There's some areas where you've got some devices, some air conditioning units, and some different walls and stuff on the building. We'd avoid putting solar in those areas that are purple. But bright yellow is an excellent opportunity. If the building is structurally sound, to place solar there, and you could be reducing the expense to operate this building by adding solar panels to it. You'd be doing the right thing for the environment and promoting yourself as embracing renewable energy. I'm going to just end it right there and take some more questions. I think I said I was going to talk about recycling. So absolutely, major components of solar panels, the glass, the aluminum, the metals, and the raw components can be recycled. California and Florida have had solar panels for 20, 30 years. as those panels have aged, they start to come up, there's a business to incorporate and recycle those materials. Alabama, we really haven't embraced solar long enough for there to be a glut of materials to even recycle. When that happens, there'll be more local recycling. Right now, I have to send panels probably to Atlanta to be recycled, something like
This
that.
state needs to just get on board with recycling, period.
And that's the case, probably that was the case with aluminum can recycling. You know, we had to embrace the aluminum can for a while before there was a market to recycle those materials. So the frustration is primarily for residential homeowners in our state that are frustrated. Businesses, the capacity reservation charge does not apply to most of the medium-sized and larger businesses in Alabama. I think that fee also applies on the absolute smallest businesses, those on the smallest electric bill. Probably the utilities often have multiple electric rates. Certainly Alabama Power has 30, 40, maybe 60 different rate structures, whether you're a farmer or you're manufacturing or you're a school or you're a homeowner, they have different rates. So they've eliminated the ability for some of those customers to get solar, and then they charge a fee for those. I'm good. That's a good one. Good slide for me to stop on. My name again was Paul Freeman. You can certainly look for us at Eagle Solar and Light. We've got a website, eaglesolarandlight.com. My contact information is there, and you should be able to find us. Always look for a certified and registered solar installer that you're engaging a solar company or professionals. Look for those with a NAPSEP or certifications that they're solar professionals. Electricians can do a lot for you, but solar providers with their own electrical staff are some of the better professionals.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I see a gas station down in Hillside. They got a bunch of solar panels in the back.
Is it out in McCollum?
Yeah, what do they do? Because I remember when at first they installed them, y'all had they had a TV up there for it. Then
Yeah.
I always wondered what it was.
So those solar,
Okay.
that was a solar, that was a solar array that was mounted on behind the building, feeds the electricity into the gas station, the convenience store, to power the lights, reduce the power bill for that customer. And well, there's enough sunlight. It's not in the shade all the time. It's actually on a slope till facing. I believe it's facing the southern sky. But that's actually, I believe it's a LEED certified. I believe that's one of the LEED certified gas stations. If not, but that was one of the first gas stations in the state of Alabama to have solar panels installed to help reduce their energy bill.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Thank you very
so
much.
much for
Any
this.
questions?